Imagine having a world where statues stand on the shores of the seas, the height of a 10-story hacienda in the desert's rise, the gardens that seem to float in the air. 12,000 years aga travelers come to lists of the most incredible buildings called the wonders of the world. These were symbols of limitless wealth, faith, and talent of the great masters of antiquity were used to seeing their images in books and movies. But the reality is that almost all of them disappeared off the 7 legendary objects. To this day survived on Lippy pyramids in Egypt. All the other masterpieces turned to dust rocks on the bottom of the ocean or foundations for ordinary residential buildings. Where have these giant structures gone and why humanity couldn't save them? We will figure it out, though exactly debated the greatest monuments of history and what's really left of them. This is a story about time natural disasters and human madness erased from the world map. Then what seemed eternal to understand how the wonders of the world disappeared and to realize how different that world was in ancient times. There was no concrete, steel, or electricity, so every such building was real feat of engineering. People spent decades to mine rare marbles, lead tons gold, and lift heavy blocks to enormous heights. But once the great empires began to weaken, their main symbols were endangered. Causes of destruction have always been different, but sometimes mysterious story of this wonder of the world started with a big war and an incredible victory which turned out to be a contemporary divine intervention in the 305th year. But powerful fleet of Commander Demetrius Bcging approached the shores of Rhodes Island using advanced engineering technologies for that time. Siege most big one was called Heliopolis. What did invader of cities mean? It was a giant tower on wheels, theater sheets to protect against fire, and equipped with powerful catapulted residents heroically held the defense for a whole year, using all your resources. Eventually Demetrium retreated, leaving all his equipment on the shore. Instead of just taking apart abandoned cars, townspeople decided to turn the symbols of war into a monument. Their freedom. They sold siege towers for a lot of money and hired a famous hare's sculptor. He created a statue of the sun god Helios. Original plan was humble, but the ambitions of the Rhodes residents were growing. First, they asked to make the statue tall 18 meters, but then they wanted to double it. Sculptor agreed, not realizing that the increase in height is twice requires 8 times more materials. Construction began in 292 BC and dragged on for 12 years to lift heavy parts to height. Shares used an unusual method. A huge earth mound was erected around the statue, growing up with the monument. When the work was finished and the ground was removed, appeared before people shining bronze giant 33 meters Higakolo stood on a white marble pedestal at the entrance to the harbor. Inside it was solid frame of iron beams and stone blocks, and on top of it were sheets of wrought bronze. The sun's rays reflected off the metal, and the sailors saw the dazzling glitter of the statue for many kilometers over. The life of the giant was surprisingly short. In the year 226 BC, there was a powerful earthquake on the island. The pushes were so strong that the iron fastenings inside the statue's legs couldn't stand. Bronze god broke in the knee area and collapsed to the ground with a few building expression of colos on clay feet. Has since apparate describing external power with internal fragility. Almost 800 years defeated gently on the shore, becoming a local landmark. Roman scholar Plinius the Elder wrote that only a few people could wrap their arms around statue. Thumphinal final came in 653rd year of our Irath Island was captured by Arab troops commanded by the commander of Muawiyah. New rulers saw in the wreckage only a valuable resource. In their orders, the remains of the bronze case were cut into pieces. Metal transportation required caravan of 900 camels. Bronze sold to buyer, which is most likely melted a masterpiece into coins or weapons. Stade on the spot where the colo supposedly stood, there are only 2 columns with figures of deer from the greatest statue of its time, and not a single fragment left which could be studied. The giant just dissolved into history, leaving behind only the memory of human pretty and the fragility of great creations. If the Colo of Rhodos was a symbol of triumph, then the Alexandrian lighthouse on Pharaoh's Island, Beckham, the highest achievement of engineering, served people for 1,500 years. Its building it began about 285 BC. By order of Ptolemy I, one of the closest commanders of Alexander the Macedonian project was led by architect Sastrid Kinitskither. Is a story it was forbidden to put your name on the building. Since all the fame had to belong exclusively. Tathan the master carved in stone an inscription about it. He dedicates this work to the god Sto, save the sailors covered it with a layer of durable plastrand. Wrote on top the name of the ruler. Decades later the plaster crumbled from the sea wind. The world finally learned the name of the true creator of the Great Tower. The lighthouse was a three-tiered tower, height of more than 120 meters. What in those days it was one of the tallest buildings on the planet. Bottom tier was square and served housing for numerous garrison workers and soldiers. The middle one had 8 facets and was rich decorated with bronze statues. Top tier was cylindrical, and it was there that a giant bonfire was lit every night so that the light is visible on the huge distance of 50 kilometers. Greeks used a complex system of a polished bronze mirrors. The filigree focused the beams and directed them far into the open, centering the day. A thick column of smoke constantly stood above the tower, which also served as a reliable reference point for merchant ships coming to rich Alexandria from all over the Mediterranean. Tons of dry firewood were required for the smooth operation of the lighthouse. Fuel was lifted to the very top of the Widia, gentle spiral staircase inside the tower using hardy pack donkeys. The lighthouse was so durable and reliable that safely survived the collapse of the Ptolemaic Empire, the arrival of the Roman legions, and the subsequent Arab conquest. But time and harsh nature gradually undermined its powerful foundation. First really serious damage happened in the year 796 AD, when a strong earthquake destroyed the top of the tower together with a unique lighting system. After this event, the lighthouse has ceased to perform its main function and for many years turned into a simple observation to guard the coast. In the middle of the 9th century, Arab rulers tried to restore the building, but instead of a signal campfire at the top installed dome of the mosque refers to this time the mysterious legend of a Byzantine spyware talking that the Emperor of Byzantium sent a cunning man to the Caliph who gained trust and convinced the ruler that under the very foundation of the Mac hidden myriad treasure. The Macedonian Caliph succumbed to persuasion and ordered immediate demolition. Building workers managed to remove the famous Mirasand ruin, part of the upper tiers, before the hype was revealed. Although it may only be a historical myth, the lighthouse really started to collapse rapidly exactly because of filtrate interference in its internal construction. Final blow was struck by the natural element in the 14th century. 1303 and 20 in the third year there were 2 major earthquakes, who finally turned the remnants lithus into a shapeless pile of huge stone blocks. When in 1349th year famous traveler Ibn Trampoline arrived in Alexandria. Sadly recorded that tower is in such a terrible state it is physically impossible to enter. Huge blocks of white marble and granite lay on the shore and in the water, gradually sinking into bottom silt and sea sand. In the year 1477 Sultan Qaid Bey decided to use this strategic location for city defense from enemies. He ordered to build on the surviving foundation lattice powerful fortress which stands there to this day to save time and construction resources. As much as possible, workers used hewn stones of the destroyed wonder of the world. So Alexandrian lighthouse lightly dissolved into the thick walls of a medieval fort at the end of the 20th century. In the year 1994, French archaeologists discovered at the bottom of Alexandria Bay hundreds of fragments of ancient statues and huge stone blocks weighing up to 70 tons. Those were genuine lighthouse leftovers. Were either thrown into the water during the construction of the fortress, either who themselves fell there during the devastating underground shocks. If the Alexandrian lighthouse or Colorado's were axed objects, the remains of which archaeologists found in the Hanging Gardens of Semiramis remain the most mysterious item on the list of wonders of the world. Scientists are still debating whether did they actually exist or were the figment of the imagination of ancient authors. According to the most popular legend, gardens were built in the 6th century BC. Seeing of Babylon on the second ordered to create this man-made miracle for his wife Midas, who was originally from mountainous and green muslin, the dusty and hot Babylon. The queen longed for coolness forests and the fragrance of flowers, so her husband decided to give her a whole mountain landscape in the middle of a flat Plantic Nicolet. was an incredibly complex structure for that time. The gardens were a four-tiered pyramid levels which were connected by wide stairs of white and pink stone. The base of each tier consisted of massive stone slabs, covered with a layer of reeds covered with asphalt and laid with a double layer of brick. They put lead sheets on top so watering water did not seep into the lower floors and did not destroy the supports. Only after that a layer of fertile land was poured such thickness that huge trees could put roots in it from afar. It seemed that lush crowns soar in the airway. The gardens got their name. Of the main mysteries was the watering system. Babylon was in a region with a very dry climate, and plants needed tons of water daily. Ancient engineers invented Dunike mechanism inside. One of the columns were pipes by which water from the river Euphrates constantly climbed to the top tier. Huge wheels with leather buckets were used for this, which were driven by slaves. Water flowed down artificial streams, and waterfowls creating pleasant coolness and humidity inside the building. It was the world's first large-scale irrigation system, working in a multi-level building. Interesting, the name of the gardens is connected with the Ossetian queen Semiramis, lived as centuries before Neocadnas. Are probably Greek historians just mixed up the names or combined different legends into one. The real flowering of the gardens lasted about 200 years when in 331 Alexander the Macedonian captured Babylon. Was so amazed by the beauty of this place that made the city its capital. They say that it is in the shadow-changing gardens the great conqueror spent his last days, enjoying the silence and aroma of rare plants brought from distant countries. The destruction of the gardens started right after Alexander died. The city gradually fell into decay, and with him a complex hydraulic system was also destroyed with a constant flow of water from the effort. Trees quickly withered under the scorching sun. Roots were used to hold the soil deed off, and the earth began to crumble. Severe floods, which often happened in this area, washed the foundation of unbricks. And like the Egyptian pyramids built of hard stone, Babylonian buildings were made of clay, which in the absence of care quickly turns into shapeless hillstone. The 1st century Adonai ruins remain of the great gardens. When the Roman historian Strabon described this place, he mentioned only the wreckage of vaults and empty terraces. Latter desert sands completely absorbed the remains of the structure. In the 20th century, archaeologist Robert Koldewey conducted excavations in Babylon and found an unusual foundation with a deep well and a complex channel system. Was confident that found those same gardens show over. Modern researchers put forward a different version. They assumeth gardens were not in Babylon and in the city of Nineveh, and were built by the Osean king Sennacherib. That explains she is not found in Babylon itself. Clear inscriptions on the construction of such a grandiose object as it. Any other way, the hanging gardens of Semiramis have completely disappeared, with leaving behind even a piece wall or fragment of wood today in their supposed place. Are only dusty excavated trenches among Iraqi sands. This wonder of the world was the first example of how men tried to subjugate nature, creating an artificial paradise, but nature took its toll. As soon as the mechanisms stopped and the people left, the great Scythian gardens literally dissolved into the landscape, leaving us only a beautiful legend of love. A king to his wife. Temple of Artemis in the city of Ephesus was not just a cult building, a real city within a city, which was considered the most magnificent building of the Greek world. This story is full of dramatic twists because this is a wonder of the world, destroyed and rebuilt several times. The largest version of the temple began to build around 550 B.C. Means the construction was allocated by the legendary Lydian king Croesus. Name is still synonymous with untold wealth. Architects Chersiphron and his son Mitagen faced a serious problem. The region was prone to frequent earthquakes, which instantly turned stone buildings into ruins. To trick the element, they chose an unusual place for foundations. Wampy lowland. A triver builders decided that soft soil would work as a natural shock absorber and will extinguish the tremors. To create a reliable support, dug a huge pit which was filled with a mixture of charcoal and sheep's wool. Massive blocks of marble were laid on this peculiar pillow. The building turned out colossal. Only 127 marble columns, 18 meters high, supported roof, and inside were kept masterpieces of the best sculptors and artists. Temple was not only a place of prayer, but also the largest bank as well as refuge where anyone could find protection from persecution for about 200 years. He thrived until the fateful night commit 21st of July 356 BC. That night a man named Herostratos, with the thirst for eternal glorisnik inside, and set fire to a wooden beam ceiling temple built. For decades burnt from the inside. In a matter of hours the marble from the high temperature cracked and crumbled, turning a masterpiece into a pile of trash. There is a famous legend what exactly that night when the temple of Artemis in distant Macedonia was burning. Alexander, the great residents of Ephesus, severely punished the culprit and took unprecedented measures to erase the memory of him. However, this decision has had the opposite effect. The name of Herostra went down in history for eras. A symbol of the senseless destruction of the beautiful Alexander is Macedonian growing up and taking over these lands. Offered F's residence Philippe for temple restoration, but provided that his name would be carved on the fact of death. Townspeople showed diplomatic cunning and refused. The king stated it is not proper for one god to build temples for other gods. As a result, the temple was restored with people's money by the year 323 BC. He had become even more majestic before and stood for several centuries, serving even the Roman conquest of the great sanctuary. Rise of Christianity and the fall of the Roman Empire in the 263rd year of our era. F's were attacked by Goth tribes. Treasures of the temple were lost. During this invasion the building itself was seriously damaged, but the final blow struck the decree of the Emperor Theodosius I in 391st year. Banned pagan cults. Temple of Artemis was officially closed, and it began to be dismantled for building materials. Residents of the city no longer saw shrines in it. Expensive marble slabs moved to Constantinople for construction. Hagia Sophia Cathedral, and from the remaining columns lime was burned for ordinary needs. With swamp time which once saved the temple from earthquakes, Bacum, his graviver sediments, and silt gradually flooded the foundation, and the ruins went deep underground. Of the 19th century, in place where once stood one of the wonders of the world, there's nothing left except the muddy puddle. Only in 1869th year, English archaeologist John Wood, after years of searching, discovered at a depth of 6 meters the foundation of an ancient temple. Today, in this desolate place, there is only one restored column, on top of which storks make nests from the golden glitter and marble grandeur of the hilt. There's almost nothing left except that lonely pillar in the middle of a swampy valley. Of other wonders of the world were dedicated to the god, sir, served practical purpose. This structure became a monument to boundless vanity and sorrow. In 353rd BC, in the city Halicarnus died ruler Mosul. During his lifetime, he began to designate his tomb, wishing so that she overshadowed with her beauty all existing temples. After his death, construction continued. Widow Queen Artemisia, which according to legend skipped exceptional loyalty to the memory of her husband, dedicating his life to building his monument for the construction of the tomb, invited the best Greek masters of that time. A mausoleum turned out unique because it combined 3 different architectural styles. That was a massive rectangular build, 45 meters high. The base was a huge pedestal of marble in which stood a temple with 36 columns. At the crown of the composition was a step pyramid, on top of which stood a marble chariotharness by 4 horses. In this wagon stood the figures of Mausolus himself and Artemis. Eighth building amazed contemporaries' whiteness and abundance of stone names of peopled lions. It turned out to be so unusual that the name of the king forever entered the history of the language, and all the large tombs were called mausoleums. Like many other wonders of the world, this structure turned out to be durable. It stood for almost 1,500 years. The fall of the empire and the campaigns of Alexander, the Macedonian end of greatness, was put by nature itself in the 13th century, when a series of powerful earthquakes occurred in the region. Tremors destroyed the columns and heavy pyramidal roof. The great monument turned into a pile of debris which lay unbroken for about 200 years. Final act of destruction happened in 1404. With the arrival of the Ionite knights, they needed to strengthen their fortress for protection from Turkish troops, and they saw in the ruins of the mausoleum free building materials of ancient construction. Over time were recycled for construction needs. There is a story how the knights discovered inside the ruined secret chamber with a magnificent sarcophagus, but when did they come back? Morning, the room was already looted by Piratesto. The 19th century in Plaza Mausoleum Remained only a deep moto-day fragments of a giant chariot are stored in the British Museum. And in the homeland of the monument you can only see an empty place with the wreckage of columns, and like all the other wonders of the world, this creation was not in the open air and inside the Templine for 135 B.C. Great sculptor Fidi completed work on the statue, which was to embody the greatness of the supreme god of the Greek Jews, set on a huge throne made of cedar and decorated with precious stones. His figure was so big wet, if God wanted to stand up, would just destroy the roof of the temple. Height of the monument reached 15 meters. Fidi used chryso-elephantine technique, which meant that the frame was wooden but the open god body parts were covered ivory plates and clothes and shoes. Pure gold. The statue looked alive. Eyes were made of major gems, and on his head was a golden wreath of olive branches. In his right hand he was holding the goddess of victory Nikonde, in the left scepter, on top of which sat an eagle. Pilgrims entering the temple were experiencing real. Author was a story that when Phidia was ascetic, he see God live before worker replied that he just followed the descriptions from the Homer poem. Say that after the completion of construction, sculptor asked Zeus for a sign. Does he approve of his work? At the same second, lightning struck the black marble floor of the temple without damaging the statue itself, for that so that ivory does not crack from moisture or dryness. Priest constantly greased the statue with olive oil before the throne, dug a special pool filled with oil, which not only preserved the material but also reflected light coming from the Dorset, was creating a mysterious shine effect coming straight from Gadamos. 800 years Olympic remained the main shrine of the ancient world of the Roman Emperor Caligula, known for his insanity tried to transfer the statue to Rimdo, replace the head of God with his imago. Weaver legend has it that as soon as the workers approached the monument, statue burst into such a loud honk that forests collapsed and frightened people ran in horror. The end of greatness came with a change in world order. In the 391st year of our Emperor Theodosius was the first to ban the Olympic Games and closed all the pagan Templeshev's temple was abandoned, and his rich ornaments became easy prey for looters. At the beginning of the 5th century, at about 416th, statue decided to Savesh was taken apart and transported to Constantinople to the private collection of a rich Lavs officialther. She stood for a few more decades. Among other ancient masterpieces, final tragedy occurred in the 475th year of our era. A huge fire broke out in Constantinople. Entire neighborhoods of the city Slav's palace burned to the ground, and with him a great statue perished in the fire. Wooden frame flashed instantly, gold melted and glass to ash, and the ivory plates turned to dust. From union of the most expensive and majestic monuments in history, there's nothing left except descriptions and images on ancient Cohen's temple itself. In Olympia, where Zeus used to stand, was finally ruined at a powerful earthquake in the 6th century. Today, on the spot temple lie only fallen columns reminiscent of the scale of construction, and in the local museum you can only see the Phidia workshop, which archaeologists found near the ruins. 6 lost wonders of the world. This is not just a list of disasters. A clear example of how fleeting is human glory. We saw that neither colossal size, neither gold nor military power couldn't save these objects from the inevitable final. Each of them died in their own way. The only miracle which stayed with us, Great Pyramid of Cheops, survivingly thanks to its extreme simplicity and incredibleness of stone that cannot be burned or easily disassembled. All the other masterpieces turned into myths making. Guess what exactly did they actually look like? Odercahalists continue to search for fragments of these structures, shipping to large-scale restore them that once united humanity in his quest for perfection and beauty. Thank you for watching the Cipher History. Don't forget to like and subscribe so we can keep decoding the secrets of history together. See you in the next mystery.